Hello, Dr. Beck. My name's Andrea Adrian, which you already know. I chose Home Sweet Away from Home as my reading think aloud because I thought it was about, I would like something a little more challenging for reading text and to start thinking about reading strategies using something that's more applicable to what I teach. I teach high school, so I think that it's more important to maybe just reevaluate my own reading strategies. So it's just kind of interesting, and that's why I chose this piece. So right away when we read number one. It says home sweet away from home. The first thing that I think is I'm going to make some predictions. With away from home in parentheses, I'm kind of predicting that they are moving to a different place, that the author is trying to stay this in a subtle way. Right away on number two, it says after relocating to Rome with her family, the writer realizes that the secret to domestic bliss is far more about a house's inhabitants than its decor. This I thought would be something very close to like determining importance. The author is saying that they're relocating right away, and that that domestic bliss happens after that. Is not about the house; it's about what they've about the people in it. I also thought that reading this, it was thinking critically. So after relocating, this also confirms what I thought originally by reading the title. And then inference, just kind of thinking about domestic bliss is more than the decor. The story is going to be about how people are more important than the actual house that you live in, and kind of saying like it's kind of like the saying like home is where your family is instead of home is where your physical house is. And then we keep reading. Oh, number three. Don't forget number three. I thought this was interesting because it was visual for me. It's a visual cue, and I thought that I was trying to make connections with it. I was trying to figure out where this came in the story. I thought that the bird is in a nest. Okay, a nest is a home for a bird, so there's a connection there. There's also these sails on, at least that's what I thought they were. These look like sails. So this nest looks almost like it's a boat, and a boat is somewhere that takes you somewhere. So I was making the connection that the bird is moving their nest, so moving their home somewhere else, so sailing away. The other thing when I was looking at this picture, I questioned why there's only one bird. Because up here it says the family, and right now there's only one bird. So that makes me wonder I mean, I feel like there should be a connection there, but I don't know for sure. So, and then if we look at number four, it says a little more than a year ago, I packed up my house, put everything I owned in storage, and moved with my husband and two children to Rome. Um, for me, that was visualized, putting all of this, everything I own into storage. I just can't, like, that would be just super hard because even and then also, I guess, schema, because when my husband and I moved from a one bedroom apartment to our house now, we had so much stuff that we didn't even know we had in a one bedroom apartment. And then looking at it now, that's not even anything what we'd have now. And so to move with two children, I personally have two children, so the stuff that comes with those children, so I'm visualizing all that in my head and also relating it to my life. And then moving on to number five. I struggled reading this section, so I had to reread it a few times. I had to adjust like how I read it and how fast I read it. For some reason, the words were hard for me to get out, and it didn't make sense, so that's why I had to reread it a few times. I made connections, and I analyzed words because it says in here that it is bureaucratically opaque. And see, I'm adjusting my pace again. Opaque, I know, is like not clear. So, and then I'm thinking a bureaucracy is like a type of government. So this must mean that Italy doesn't have a complete clear government. And that's what I've just come up with through that. And then we move on to six, and it says it caused an unforeseen psychic upheaval too. We moved from Brooklyn, the first house we ever allowed us to have the space to feel like true adults. I had worked to make that house. And so Psychic upheaval. This must mean that it was emotionally hard for them to adjust. So I had to analyze that text a little bit. I've never really heard that saying, so that was a little bit interesting. And then I thought that was an interesting way for the author to make her point. And then it says, I'd labor through the charge. Okay, so number 7, visualizing again. Stages of renovation, obsession, denial, compromise. I'm visualizing that they wanted to redo parts of their house, but they start out with these really big plans, but realize they maybe can't do them, probably because of money, and then they compromise on something to live with. So that would be where the compromise comes into play. The denial is figuring out that it can't happen, and obsessions the really big plans. Then I read on number 8. This I thought was just mostly visualizing. I visually am seeing the different things around the house, like the antiques and everything. So number 9, moving on, because I'm running out of time here. Number 9, I had to solve this word. I've never heard of the word bulwark right here. Oh, there we go, bulwark. I tried to use the context clues around the word, and I reread it a few times, trying to use context clues again, and then I was thinking that it meant something to fight against the family dysfunction, because the next sentence says that they have convection and stability, which is the opposite of dysfunction. Number 10 here, visualizing, and I use schema also. I'm visualizing that long road with that rundown hotel. In my head, the hotel looks dirty on the outside with half the lights are out. Maybe this is not specifically what the text says, but in what I've seen from different movies and different stuff, that's how I envision rundown hotels. 11, I used analyzing the text. The author has tried to put humor in, and it's not the first time that the author has done that. So I thought that was kind of cute. Just looking at like author style there. Like, who knew Rome was in the middle of nowhere? It's just a little humor to add a little flair in there. 12. I was wondering how they found this grand penthouse, because you went from a cramped 1-bedroom apartment and then the rundown hotel to now you have a grand penthouse. How did this come about? 13, I still was questioning again. I don't understand why they wouldn't have asked this family friend a long time ago to move into a place like this. Why would you have stayed in a rundown place? And then I'm also visualizing and using my schema. Like, I'm visualizing this fancy motel that has vaulted ceilings, and then I just envision that this hotel is this penthouse is a lot like a museum. Like, I don't. That's what I'm picturing in my head. 14, synthesizing. With these few lines, I wonder if my original thoughts about the article are about the being important family traits. If that's not what, if that's not what this is really about anymore, I feel like this is now the author telling that this is an opportunity that they took. So maybe it's not necessarily about how it's a family based and not about the home, but maybe it's about taking an opportunity. Because she also states that she's dreamed, and it surpasses it right here. This is where I thought, well, maybe now we're talking about opportunities instead of about family. 15, I thought this was more about determining importance. I'm trying to figure out what the author means, especially when I was synthesizing right before it. So maybe it's some importance here. I said, I think the author wants us to realize that the word borrowing, because she uses it multiple times in the same borrowing. So definitely part of her writing style too, like to make the importance, the connection. She wants us to realize that borrowing is something she wants us to pick up on. And I also was using my synthesizing. Home was easily replaced. My original thoughts are back on track with what I thought the author was trying to do with about the family. Again, 16 up here. this I used a lot of schema because it's very relatable to my life. I have many domestic routines, as most people do. I cook most of the nights, and we have this beautiful yard in the country. That's where we live. And so a lot of times in the summer, I will cook out there, we'll grill, and I can just, that I'm visualizing my backyard, so I would think that that's what she's enjoying, especially when she refers to her tulips. Um, and she also says something about the baskets of laundry, and that is the epitome of my house. So we also have that in common. I also said that this is schema, inference, determining importance all together. The author makes a simile of the children being like anchors, and I know in my world that my children are my anchor along with my husband, so my family. And you can tell that this is important to the author. And I know that it's a simile because they use the because similes are like or as, and they use as anchors. 17. I'm trying to hurry because I'm running out of time. 17. Solving words. I don't know what that talisman. I know I tried sounding out. I reread the sentence. I looked for context clues. I still couldn't figure out what it meant. So I had to use my resources, and I actually used the dictionary lookup on this one. 18. I was searching for information in here and putting it together, and I was rereading, and I used my inferences. Up to this point, I was unsure if the author was actually male or female, which I know sounds silly now. But then I reread the first paragraph, went back and reread it, and said, oh, yep, she said my husband and children, so she must be a female. And I also thought I used my determining importance because the author makes connections that she doesn't need physical things that she once thought she needed, but now she can appreciate it even if it's someone else's. So she says, like with the sunlight, and how she appreciates someone else's vase and it's not hers. 19, I thought was determining importance and making connections again, because we're starting to wrap up. So I think the author's trying to make those connections. She's stating how freeing it feels to have not the responsibilities of the physical aspects of a home. Personally, I think that might be a nice feeling to have, because I look around my house and think of all the improvements that I need to do, how we haven't painted in a long time and how that needs to happen. But then I also think I love my home because it's my home. So I was trying to make a connection there, but then I also do love my home. 20, here I questioned. I said, what made the author realize that family was the most important part of her life? Did it take all 3 moves to finally appreciate what she had? So I just kind of questioned, when did that happen? And then 21 is I was still questioning. I was thinking, is it like human nature to want to come back to somewhere to call that home? And then I was like, using my schema, I said I was thinking about my cousin who recently had been displaced because of the Florida hurricane. And before that, her and her husband moved because her husband's in the military. Before that, she had not referred to Florida as her home. She referred to North Dakota and Minnesota as her home. And then after she was displaced for a period of time, she was back up here. She referred to Florida as home. She goes, I want to go home. I want to go home. And so I don't know if it maybe takes losing your home in order to connect that you want your home. And then 22 is just this little part about the actual author. And I use my synthesizing because it says she right here. She is the founding member. So I know for a fact that it was a woman, even though I did confirm it back up here on number 4 here when she said my husband and 2 children. So that is my Think Aloud project. And you'll read more about it in the reflection that I will write up. Have a great day.